Welcome back to another episode of Decide to Heal. And my friend, it is you and I today. Buckle up because we are going to talk about a very important topic that you are not going to want to miss, because this topic for today is what sets the foundation for your healing. And it's exactly why I decided to call this podcast Decide to Heal. This has to do with decisions. Now, you might think like, oh, that's not very sexy. Like, why is that so important? Decisions. That doesn't seem like it's a topic that should be a major conversation. But it is. It is such a fundamental part of your healing. And my intention is, and hope from our time together here, this short time that we have, you will see why it is so important that you make the decision to heal. Any decision that will lead toward your healing, because let's face it, we're all going through something in life. You have something very specific in this season of your life that you are walking through. And you may have thought that you are doing all the right things and are in all the right circles and have the right tools and the right people to support you or mentor you or coach you through it. And yet you're still finding yourself challenged. You're still finding yourself cycling around wondering, why? I'm doing all the right things. Why isn't this working? What is happening here? Which can make you feel a little bit like you're nutty. And it's not that you are, my friend. It's that you just haven't made the decision for whatever focus area or season that you are walking through. So let's just start by talking about what is a decision versus a choice. Because that's what this is really about. What is that decision between choice? Because we don't know the difference. It's often like but they're put together. They're like synonymous decisions and choices. And you have to understand there's a major distinction between the two. So let's just start there. And I want you to think about the word decide. A decision is very different from a choice. And as I was saying, typically choices and decisions are thought about and used interchangeably within the self-help industry. However, this word decide, okay, I'm going to totally mess this up, so forgive me. The word decide comes from the Latin word decidere, something like that. Decidere. Yeah, totally butchering that, but I don't speak Latin, so forgive me, Kate. It comes from a different word. It stems from a different word. And this Latin word of decidere, it actually means to cut off, which implies making a choice is no longer an option. Now, this is really important for you to understand and grasp. The decision or decisions that you are making kill off, cut off every other choice. And I like to use that word kill off rather than cut off, which I understand is it's a deep word. Like that's an intense word to say kill off. But for you to truly understand that a decision is like done, there is no other choice. That is a death. When there's nothing else to choose, it is literally done. That is a death. That is how you have to think about decisions. Now, decisions and choices, they actually engage similar parts of the brain, but they have very different functions. They both engage what's called the prefrontal cortex. It's right up there at the front part of the brain. When you learn like 2 + 2 = 4, it gets stored up there in that prefrontal cortex, specifically the neocortex. Choices often involve more immediate, like straightforward evaluations with less depth than decisions do. So there's not so much depth to it. Again, that's why we're using a really intense word, cut off, kill off. Because with a choice, there's not that much depth. There's not that much to it, really. Now, the amygdala, which is the emotional part of the brain, I've kind of mentioned it throughout our, different podcast episodes, but the amygdala is this emotional part of the brain. And it's also involved for both decision making and choosing or making choices. But more so with choices, the amygdala assists in evaluating risks and rewards. And it's often playing a more predominant role in the choices due to their influence on emotions and immediate gratification. So choices, that was important, by the way. I don't know if you caught that. Let me say that again. Choices are influenced by your emotions and your immediate gratification. It's like that magic pill. We want that like magic pill. I want to lose the 10 pounds right now. I want my relationship to change right now. I want to have my business success right now. It's that immediate gratification. And in some way, we think that's going to make life amazing, but it doesn't. Okay. Kind of went off on a tangent there, but it's true. Choices are all about give me the immediate gratification. And if I don't have that, then it's not okay. This is why decision making is harder than making a choice. It's also why we just kind of collapse the two together and we interchange them and play with them like they're the same thing, and they are not. Decision making, it involves more of an extensive engagement with that prefrontal cortex part, because there has to be a deeper analysis and planning. If you're going to cut off every other option, there has to be that deeper analysis. There has to be that deeper planning of things, right? Otherwise, it's like, ooh, am I going to make the wrong choice? It's why we circle around decision makings. We don't want to be wrong. I mean, let's be real here. Do you like to be wrong? No, me neither. No one does. So that's why we go into a deeper analysis of things and planning. So as I was mentioning, the reason for this is because decisions require a commitment that is unwavering. Because if you're going to create a death, so to speak, quote unquote, death, so to speak, you better make that commitment and have it be unwavering. Choices, again, you don't have that same level of commitment. You're really just looking for that immediate gratification. So some more distinction here for you to really get the difference. A choice is about selecting from all these available options, while a decision is about reaching a final conclusion after analyzing your options. Choices connects to the place of desired intention, values, and beliefs. A decision connects to a place of behavior, performance, and consequences. So making a choice means picking one or two or more options. Making a decision means deciding to act on one and only one option. Everything else dies off. While both choice and decisions have significant impacts on your life, a decision often carries like more weight. I hope you're getting that from this. And that's due to that process that's involved and the way in which you're going to move forward or not. So there's so many examples of the power of decision making. I hope this is landing for you in a way of like, okay, Alejandra, this is making sense because I thought I was making decisions in my life, but really I've only been making choices because I want that immediate gratification. I'm afraid to be wrong. I don't want to again, fall into that wrong, I've failed place again, which I totally get. I don't want to be making the quote unquote wrong decisions either. But at the end of the day, decisions have to be made. And I know that I cannot continue living my life through just choices because they don't work. And they will continue to keep me and you in a continual cycle, a 360 that just it's a hamster wheel. There is no getting off of that hamster wheel when you're just making choices. There is a power to decisions, and there's many examples of the power of decision making. Before I get into that power part, I want to give you an example of what does a decision look like versus a choice. So let's use an example we can all relate to, because I know this has happened to you before. It's happened to me several times, and it's something that if you're a human being, this has happened, which is burning yourself. So in my early 20s, I was like in the era of, oh gosh, now I forgot what they're even called. The whole like Weight Watchers, like microwavable meals. There was a name for them, but I basically just like bought them in a little cardboard box, pulled off the top, shoved it in the microwave, and like that was my meal. That was my cooking extent in my early 20s. That's pretty much what I lived off of. All right. Well, then I started to mature and I thought, you know what? I am going to learn how to make a chicken. And that was like the first thing that I decided to make. And I'm using the word on purpose, decided to make. Okay. So here I am thinking I'm so awesome. I didn't even follow a recipe. I was just like, I'm going to put butter on this thing. I'm going to throw some salt and pepper, whatever. I thought it was awesome. I even preheated the oven, and I go to the oven and I'm like putting the chicken into the oven. And right here, I'm touching my thumb. If you're not watching the YouTube video, you're just tuning in to audio. I actually touched the very top part of the bar on an oven, and it burned the bahookie out of me. Like, oh, I dropped the chicken. Yeah, it was a mess. It was just a mess. Okay, so I burned myself. Guess what decision I made in that moment? And if you're thinking to never make a chicken again, no, that's not the decision I made. The decision I made, and the decision you have made whenever you have burned yourself, is I am not going to do that again. Never going to do that again. I'm never going to burn myself again. Why? There was no benefit. I didn't get anything out of it. Nothing. It was like, that sucked. No, I'm never doing that again. That is a decision. That is the power of a decision, because anytime I go to make a chicken now, which is fewer and far between, by the way, and now I use my air fryer, which I totally love. But anytime I do go use the oven, I don't have to consciously be thinking to myself, okay, Alejandra, remember, don't get your hand too close to that upper bar because it's going to singe your skin and burn really bad. No, it's completely subconscious now that anytime I am near an open flame, a stove, a fire, anything that could potentially burn me, I don't get near it. Why? Because I made the very powerful decision to never do that again. That is the power of a decision, and it's also an example of what a decision looks like. Another example that I think most of us can all relate to is when you decide to travel somewhere and get on a plane, the moment you sit in your seat on that plane and they close that cargo door, it's done. The decision has been made. There is no other choice. Every other choice has been killed off and cut off. Now, this also leads to another important piece of decision making. Once you're in that seat and you've made that decision, guess what you have to do then? Trust. You have to have trust and faith in the airplane, in the pilot, in the people who made the airplane, in God, above all, that you will get to your destination safely and easily. That's it. Decisions, when you kill off or cut off any other option, there is a level of faith and trust that happens because you have surrendered any other choice. That is an example of a decision, and it's also the power that can come within a decision. So let's talk about, because I hear this a lot with clients. And now that you kind of have the understanding of the difference between decision and choice and some examples of what decisions can actually look like when you cut off every other option, I have clients that tell me about decisions that they believe they've made. And it's interesting because in their mind, they genuinely believe that they've made a decision. But I always have to question them, because if they are still stuck, but let me pose this in a you way. If you're still stuck and yet you think you've made a decision about something, but if you're still stuck and you're struggling in something, you're still in the process of choice, trying to select different options, because most likely you're trying to avoid, again, making the wrong decision. You don't want to fall into that cycle. So you just don't make the decision or convince yourself that you've decided, but really you're just choosing. So it's like I see this all the time. And this convincing yourself, or when I ask my clients about it and they've convinced themselves, they've decided, but the reality is they're just avoiding making the real decision. And yes, you do that too, my friend. You've convinced yourself that you've decided, but in reality, you're just avoiding the real decision. The reason why I can say that is because, again, if you want to stop a certain behavior, let's say people pleasing, and you have said to yourself, I'm deciding, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going to give myself away anymore. I'm not going to say yes to things anymore. And then you find yourself saying yes to things that you don't want to. Or you have a plan and then you let someone derail you from your plan. You haven't decided. If you want to lose 10 pounds and you're doing the things to make that happen for like the first few weeks, but then you start to slip and you start eating more sweets and you stop going to the gym the way that you were, again, you haven't decided. Or if you said that you weren't going to get angry, let's say at your husband or your kids, but then once again, you're right there bickering with them, and you're bickering at your husband for not listening to you or not caring, or you're bickering at the kids because they haven't followed through on what you've told them to do, you haven't decided. Or if you said that you decided to have a conversation with someone and then you didn't do it, you haven't decided. I'm trying to give you like different examples so that you can see, like, you may have convinced yourself that you have, but really it's just a choice you've made. And in doing that, you're giving yourself this flexibility. And listen, choices are good. I'm not downplaying choices. There is a time and a place for choice. You need to make choices in your day to day. I'm talking about the real stuff that are keeping you stuck in the season in which you are in right now, wherever you are stuck, struggling, challenged, and need healing. That is what I'm challenging you on with this. Now, you know when you have made a decision. You literally just know, because you've cut off every option. It's like your brain knows the difference. Just like I was saying, I don't have to consciously tell myself not to get near a flame because I'd already killed off every other option. I decided not to burn myself, not to get near that flame, just like you do the same thing. Does it happen accidentally? Sure. But you know what that accident does? Reinforces the original decision. That's what it does. So your brain knows the difference, and it signals in the ways that you don't even have to think about it. So whatever situation you're in, whatever stuck area, and again, I hope this is resonating to a deep place. Whatever that situation is, let me share with you the solution to getting to a place of decision. It's surrendering your ego, edging God out. It's surrendering your ego and reconnecting with God. That is the first and most crucial part of making a decision. Only then can decisions really be made, is when you're surrendering your ego and reconnecting with God. That surrendering of your ego, it's like, think about what I was talking about earlier and why you don't decide. It goes back to that whole being wrong and not wanting to fail. It's your ego that doesn't want you to be wrong. It's your ego that fights against needing to be right. It's your ego that says, I can't fail. That's not okay. That is why any decision begins with surrendering your ego, and you have to know who or what you're surrendering. So who are you surrendering to? God. I don't know what better place to surrender yourself to or from or person to surrender yourself to. Like, he's your creator. He's the greatest power in the world. He loves you more than you love yourself. Like, why wouldn't you want to surrender to him? And listen, if you're struggling with your relationship with God and there's things around like obedience that you're confused on, or just religion versus relationship, would you please reach out and let me know through comments or through email, or just commenting on the YouTube, or reaching me through that application that's listed in the show notes. Because there is something that is just, I feel like God, especially Jesus, is just so misunderstood. It like breaks my heart how much he is misunderstood. Because it is the key to your healing and that reconnecting, beginning with surrendering. That is what's going to allow you to make a decision that you don't have to be afraid of the outcome of. Now, I wanted to share with you guys a personal example because, it's one thing for me to get out here and like preach and teach. And yeah, it's quite another to actually be vulnerable and share with y'all. So I want you to know a decision that I made in my life. That true healing began from making this decision. And had I not made this decision, gosh, how long ago is that now? 20 years ago? I've been coaching 22 years. This was about 20-ish years ago. No, sorry. It was actually later than that. Maybe like 18, 19 years ago. Time period doesn't matter. Rabbit hole. Let me come back. And this is uncomfortable to share with this decision that I made with you, which is why I'm kind of dancing around it. But I want you all to know, like, I practice what I teach, not preach. There's a difference. I practice what I teach. So my beautiful husband, I would not be married to him today if I did not make this decision, however many years ago. He is not the father of my of my daughter, so he's not her he is not her biological father. But I met him when she was about a year old, so that is dad to her. That is fully dad. He has always been dad. He will always be dad. Now, I share this with you because for you to know where I was at within my life during that time. It was a place where when I met him, I felt very unworthy, not good enough. Yeah, not important, stupid, bad, like all of these things. And when I met him, he really took that away. Like, he made me feel fabulous. He made me feel worthy. He made me feel wanted. And it felt amazing until it didn't. Because I was giving him the power to make me feel a certain way. So, of course, like a year or so into the relationship and him becoming father to my daughter and me starting to feel like, okay, now you're not making me feel great about myself anymore. Well, guess what I did? I sought it from another man. I went out of the relationship and sought it from someone else who would make me feel worthy and wanted again and loved and important and all of these things and good enough. And Eric did not know at that time. And so I cheated on him, is what I did. We were not married at the time, but again, he took on the role of father to my daughter. We were living together, but because I was like resentful, I was mad at him, which is crazy, but I was mad at him for like not making me feel good about myself anymore. So fine, I'm just going to go find that from someone else. And that's what I did until that didn't work. And I started feeling bad again. And so I ended that relationship. And this is around the time where I really started to like dive into life coaching and like, oh my gosh, my life is a mess. Things are not good. I don't feel good. Like not feeling good is an understatement. I felt horrible about myself and about life. And I started realizing, hello, I am the main the common denominator. I am the main one here. So I went down the path of like, okay, I'm going to totally dive into my work and doing the life coaching and applying it for myself. This was all before I knew God as well. Cause y'all know, if you listen to my testimony, I only met God about 7 years ago. So this was way before I had met God, but I was still on the life coaching path and self-development. And so I dove into that. And I created a lot of healing at that time. It was fundamental. It was, I was going to say fundamental. It wasn't. It was like deep healing, but not core healing. That's a good way to distinction. So it was deep healing, but not core healing. And I had made choices, even though I thought I had decided to let it go, move on, not let it affect my relationship. But I was making these choices that I thought were going to be healthy for our relationship to not tell him. And I was making that choice because I thought if I actually tell him, he'll leave. And then Mia, my daughter, our daughter, would have lost another father. And that was not okay. So I had made, again, I thought I had made the decision of like, okay, I'm not going to share with him, but really it was just a choice because I kept going back and forth for a few years. Should I tell him? Should I not tell him? And then I would justify and go into a circle and just like a hamster wheel back and forth. There was no real decision ever made until I was sitting in an event to learn to speak because I wanted to start speaking publicly and getting on stages and sharing a message and, connecting with more people. And at this point, I felt like I had shoved deep down that whole experience and had moved on and, I'd had deep healing. And I'm sitting at this event and the trainer, the teacher of the course is asking a question that was, what have you lied about? Because on stage, you are naked. There's nowhere you can hide. There's nowhere you can go. All eyes are on you and people will see through you. So what have you lied about? And instantly it was like, oh my gosh, out of the deep part of the box that I had shoved this whole thing into, instantly was brought up. My palms were sweating. My heart was racing. My cheeks turned red. The teacher was like, are you okay, Alejandra? I was like, yes. Yeah, good. Whew, that was a hard day to get through because I was at the beginning of the day. But by the time I was driving home, I decided. I made the decision and I knew I had made the decision. I had killed off every other option. No voice was coming in talking to me about, well, you could do this instead of that. Like you could tell him a little piece of it or you could tell a little piece of that because what if he does leave and you don't want Mia to lose another debt? No, all the justifications were done. I knew I had decided and I called him on my way home and I said, we need to talk when I get home. I got home that evening and I told him and he left. And then he came back. And then he came back and, it was a journey to get back to forgiveness. And Finding the core true healing that needed to happen, y'all, within myself and of course within my relationship. But he and I would not be married today or together today had I not made that decision. That decision truly led to core healing that happened. So I share all that with you. One as an example, two as you can do this no matter how many justifications you have, no matter how afraid you are, no matter how much you don't want to be wrong, no matter how much your ego is getting in the way. I had to surrender my ego to have that conversation with him. Now, I didn't know God at the time, but he knew me. And he was leading me and guiding me through that entire process and conversation until the moment where he was like, enough, Alejandra, it's time for us to actually meet, which was many, many years later. But he guided me through that without me even knowing it. So you are being supported, whether you recognize it or not. And these decisions that you need to make in your life, you can do and need to do in order for your healing to occur. This is why I decided to name this podcast Decide to Heal, because you need to make the decision for true transformation to happen. If you don't kill off every other option, it's not going to work. You will find yourself cycling again and again and again. Okay, so to wrap up, I just want to reiterate that there is a distinction between choosing and deciding. You make choices day in and day out. The choices that you make are more based on, vision, values, those beliefs, things that we talked about earlier. But a decision comes from the action. It's an actionable thing that you follow through with. Okay. Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like that was a lot, you guys, to walk through, but so important. Decisions create an impact and weight, and they're just so good. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of Decide to Heal. And I mentioned if you have questions or if you wanted to share something around the whole piece of surrendering your ego and reconnecting with God, please let me know. We can even do an episode about it. As a matter of fact, that might be a really good thing to do. Okay. Until then, my friends, again, love you, appreciate you, and thank you for letting me share. And if there might be judgments around what I shared, and that's okay. I know that I'm here to give you truth and to support you into deciding to heal. Ciao for now, my friends.